जो fact है वो fact है that you probably there's a missing limb or there's a condition which you have, but the disability is not caused because of that. The disability caused because there are no services for you to do that. Yeah. So in very simple terms, you might not be able to walk with your legs, but the fact that you don't have a wheelchair, the fact that there is no ramp makes it a disability. Yeah. In our own research, Nikunj, we've seen that families who come to Delhi go to at least 7 hospitals in the city to look for a cure for the child, and everywhere they're saying kuch nahi ho sakta. But then there's a Baba who's saying, I'll do it for half of your monthly salary. Regardless of their disability, be it invisible or invisible, I think we should have the comprehension that the burden of the responsibility will fall on the mother. No, she will give those extra hours. And how do you design your programs in such a way?
Hi Pratik, and welcome to Postcards.
Thank you, Nikunj, for having me.
Hi, I'm Nikunj, and welcome to Postcards, your passport to unseen corners of people, policy, and politics. I'm really thrilled to discuss this very, very important conversation, which is both crucial and essential in this day and age. Today, we are talking about students living with visible and invisible disabilities. Talking about India, from the early 2000s, when there were less than 2% in our classrooms, and I'm talking here about the CWSN students or children with special needs, that percentage has actually soared to 61%. That was just before COVID in 2019. Around the world, there are more students who are increasingly, CWSN students who are increasingly entering the classrooms as well. Despite all of that, there are millions of others who are not getting any support or the right support that they need as well. Looking at this, it kind of makes us think about where are the systemic failures? Why are the ramps not there where they should be? And what lies behind this large change? And therefore, today's conversation is a lot about rights, equity, and ensuring that every citizen and human being in the world is living a life with dignity. It's about how do we go beyond all these buzzwords and how do we think about this word invisible? Like, what is a visible disability and what is an invisible disability? And when we think about ADHD, dyslexia, and a lot more, what does it truly mean? I'm thrilled that you're joining us for this conversation, and I'm even more thrilled that we are talking to Pratik today. Hi Pratik, and welcome to Postcards.
Thank you, Nikunj, for having me.
Of course, Pratik, you are an executive director at ASTHA, and you have been with ASTHA for more than 8 years now. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's my 9th year now. I'll complete 9 years in April.
Oh, congratulations. And you recently got married as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
How's married life treating you?
Good, yeah. I mean, I think it came a bit too late. But yeah, I think one of the happiest moments of my life.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And thank you so much for joining us in this really important conversation. ASTHA, of course, everyone knows the crucial work that you do, the whole organization does, making sure that the students with visible and invisible disabilities are getting the right support, the rights and advocacy is happening. And you also work at the intersection of poverty, health, and other areas as well, because it's not a very siloed space as well. But before we jump into that, Pratik, a little bit about you. So what got you into this space? Like, what motivated you to work in this space and then in this field? And where is that true genesis of, that motivation? Was there a particular moment, or is it something larger?
I think it's a story which a lot of people would relate to in this country. So after passing 12th, I was very confused on what to do. And when you're confused, then someone has to decide for you. So in my family, we have a lot of engineers. My father's side have a lot of engineers. When I say lot, nearly universal coverage of engineers in my family.
And are they all computer engineers or like varied engineers?
Computer engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electronics, electrical. You say it and we have it.
Yeah.
So I think while I was confused, my family knew that probably engineering was the thing to do. And gradually, I also probably imbibed it. I thought engineering is the thing for me. For a fleeting moment of time, I thought probably it's hotel management. But then we went with engineering, and I spent 4 years of my life studying electronics and communication, Nikunj, which even till now I have no idea about what I studied. I think failed in a lot of classes, and I think one of the worst times of my life during those 4 years. I think it was the 4th year of my engineering. My sister was actually working on public health and safe abortions, and I would come back from classes and she would tell me her harrowing stories of women in northeast part of this country and other parts, undergoing abortions and health issues. And I think that was one pivot which enabled me to think that there are different ways. There are different careers, one could do different things. I had this amazing professor in my engineering, who's Saroj Dhal, and he used to teach us industrial sociology.
Okay.
So, one of those professors who has a arts background and one who thinks about diversity. I think, it was this engineering time, the last year I thought that, I need to think of different things, and I probably not made to do coding for my entire life. Although it was not very, it was not very easy because, and it was not always my choice, because I also failed 17 interviews post engineering. So I did sit for placements.
Right.
It was a horrible experience. I used to go there, didn't know what to say, and of course, why would anyone select me as they should not have. I took a break. I studied everything under the sky. I thought I should do civils. I'll bring changes. I'll make policies, and I'll change the world. And I studied 1 year. I studied Noam Chomsky. I studied libertarianism. I studied social welfare. I studied constitutional rights. So everything under the sky, which was non-science and non-tech, I studied for that year. It was that time my sister said, "Oh, my junior has." She's gone to TIS in Bombay, and it's a fabulous institute, and no one can get into that. My engineering college was not it was not a IIT or IIM. It was a state engineering college. The fact that she said that it's difficult to get in TIS, I thought I have to. I applied for TIS to study social work and public health. I got there in my second attempt. They didn't take me in the first attempt. I studied social work for 2 years there. I think that those 2 years was the time I actually studied something which I liked for my entire life. I studied everything again because this gives you this immense exposure to everything, and also the people who came there.
Right.
The young people who studied sociology, psychology. I think I studied social work. I studied public health. During the last year of my master's, I got to know about ASTHA. ASTHA didn't have its website back then. They were being funded by this amazing organization called ActionAid. ActionAid ki website mein there was this small page of ASTHA, and I thought I have to explore disability. And I told my professor Brindle that I have to explore disability, and I came to ASTHA as an intern actually. So you have something called block field placements.
Okay.
So 45 days I came to ASTHA. I worked in an urban village for education of children with disabilities, enabling parents to become school management committee members. I went back to TIS because that was our 4th semester, and I didn't sit for placements because I knew that this was my thing. I also knew, Nikunj, that I don't want to give any more interviews. So
fair enough.
I was very
after
clear.
16, 17.
There were more. I was very clear. I said I am going to get a job which will have no interviews as a process. I'm not going to take any more failures in that sense. But I think I went back. I received a letter from ASTHA's managing trustee that they're going to, a virtual job offer letter. And I came there as an intern, Nikunj. My first year was as a program manager. I ran several projects on intersections of public health and disability because I studied public health. During my second, third year, they asked me to become the assistant director, which I accepted with a great reluctance. In my third, fourth year, they said, okay, lead the organization as the ED. So it's been that kind of journey. I mean, it's been 8 years now. I've seen the journey from just being an intern to the director of this organization.
Of course.
And yeah, I mean, I can go on and on, but I'll stop here. Yeah.
And was there a particular moment, right? Like, I think we are celebrating Children's Day shortly on the 14th of November.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why we really wanted to do this episode, right?
Yeah.
Because we talk about children and, you know, like being the future, and which is so crucial. But at times we also kind of miss out on talking about children, you know, who, for whom, like around the world, the policies are not directly like thought through or made, but at times retrofitted, right? Essentially. Yeah. So from that lens, essentially, I was thinking when you were a child, and you thought about, you know, maybe you're not thinking about terms like inclusion or whatever, right? But like whatever the essence of it is, was there any moment at that time that stayed with you, like which made you question, you know, privilege, inclusion, or, you know, was there any student you feel like, oh, why they are not getting the same things that you're getting?
Yeah. So I mean, not a particular instance of disability, but so in the 3rd standard, I started having vision difficulties. Yeah.
Okay.
So I always used to be a backbencher till my engineering days. So 12 years of schooling and 4 years of engineering. For 16 years of my life, I've always been a backbencher. Happily. So I started having vision difficulties in my school during 3rd standard, 4th standard, and so gradually I started moving up. I mean, you know, not up but ahead. From the back bench to the front medium benches, middle benches, just to see the blackboard clearly. And that was the like saga of the next 8 years. By the time I was in 7th and 8th, I was looking at my classmate's notebook, because with 3 feet was much better than looking at 5 feet, whatever. So I used to just see his notebook and copy everything, but I couldn't see anything. By the time I was in 9th standard, I was sitting on the floor. Yeah, because the entire classroom is on the benches, but I'm on the floor, but I can't see. And the teacher is also not saying, why are you sitting on the floor? I mean, they're not forcing me to wear spectacles. It was during those years when I actually had spectacles. So my mother used to give it to me. I used to wear them from my house, take them out, of course, as soon as I stepped out, and keep it in my bag. And I did this for good 7 years. I cleared my 10th board exams just like this, without seeing anything. I mean, not without seeing anything, but with great difficulty.
Yeah, of course.
I now don't know how did I study, because I couldn't see things. After I cleared my board exams, I think it was in the 11th standard, again, my sister took me to this optometrist, and, you know, he was just sitting like we both are sitting, and there was a bottle on the table, and he said, read the brand of the bottle. I said, I don't know. And then he said, what are you doing? Because if someone's walking in your home, you're not able to see them, you're not able to identify them. You're not able to identify your relatives, and you're not able to see things. How are you living your life? I mean, I think it's just that personal experience, you know. So I realized what it does to you, and what it also does to your self-esteem. It's not always about aids and appliances, no. It's a lot about how you feel within. I just felt uncomfortable wearing spectacles because I knew people would make fun. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just this one instance. I mean, not just one instance, but a good 7-8 years of my life, which now I reflect back and think that what would disabled kids feel. Yeah. So yeah.
No, of course, and I think it kind of really highlights, right? Yeah. One of my friends, Shafali, who is of course a disabled rights activist as well, she talks about everyone is just one step away from ability to disability, right? Like we don't think about it, we don't think about access, and suddenly when something is not there, and then you're suddenly like, okay, right? And in this case, like for many children, I guess, like then what I'm taking away is like sometimes you just assume that this is how the world is, versus having a space or like language or whatever to talk about it as well. Did you also feel that way when this was happening? I don't know now. I mean, to be very honest, I don't know. I just knew that I can't wear spectacles. I mean, I just can't. Or if I have to, everyone else have to. I can't be also because it was not from my birth. No, it was something which I have to. So people will notice that change. In my 3rd or 4th standard, my friends will say, why are you wearing like that? Why are you wearing this? It's not something you have. You've
from your start, from your day one. I didn't want to break that, that routine, and people will start questioning me and making fun. So I just didn't do it. The only time I did it, and the first time I did it, when I changed my school actually. So even then I was not very young. No, I mean, when you're in 11th standard, you're not too young to not decide these things. I was lucky for my school to not give me the PCM, and I shifted to a different school. Because I shifted to a different school, then I thought, now I can wear.
And which kind of talks about like things like stigma or biases or like, just being made fun of, right? Which is what you are talking about. Like, and so many other students feel that way because of different reasons, which is very tricky. I think we have been using the term disability. So I'm actually curious, how do you define disability? Like, the term disability, what are visible and invisible disabilities? And imagine you're talking to a 7-year-old. So how would you define this to someone who is a 7-year-old?
Difficult. So I think the first thing is, what do you call a disability? No, because there's just so much confusion. Special needs and Divyang and disability. So I think I'll answer it according to an instance I have. So I have a nephew who's now 13. He was 10 when he came to ASTHA. And that was the first time. He always knew that what kind of work I do. That was the first time he actually came to one of our Diwali Mela. So we do these big inclusive celebrations where disabled, non-disabled kids come. And he said, Mamu, there are kids on wheelies. Mamu, he can't see. So the fact that he was there, Nikunj, I mean, I didn't have to explain it to him. See, I mean, I'm saying it's difficult to explain disability even to someone who's been here for 30 years. Because there's so much confusion in the politics around it. For my nephew, he knew this is part of the human diversity the moment he saw it. Also, I mean, of course, the respect that he has for me, I thought grew immensely because he actually then saw the work I've done. But he saw that there are kids who can't move without a certain wheelchair. There are kids who need some support and things will work out for them. I will just ensure, Nikunj, that the 7-year-old sees a disabled kid, and it does wonder, because regardless of whatever you say, it's not going to probably work out for them, and the meaning they will take from their parents and the society will be very different. I mean, it worked for him. It might work for so many others. I know I haven't answered your question, but just because you interact with disabled kids, with children with disabilities, I think the idea of definitions get dismantled.
I think one of the things that will be more interesting to also know then is also like, with all the definitions that are there, right? For if someone is there who's new to this topic or conversation, or don't have much language, right? Or is not studying psychology as one of the team members with disability as a focus. So how do we define visible, like, so what is visible disability, what is invisible disability, and what all comes under it reasonably?
So I mean, as I was saying, there are 21 disabilities in the law, which we have moved from 1995 to 2016, where we had just 5 or 6 disabilities, to a situation, to a law where we have 21 disabilities. A lot of work has been done around this. So Nikunj, typically, I mean, the definition of disability, now the accepted definition of disability is that there's an inherent condition in either your body or your mind or your behavior, which prevents you from doing your daily task in an optimal way. So there's that. जो fact है वो fact है that you probably there's a missing limb or there's a condition which you have, but the disability is not caused because of that. The disability caused because there's no services for you to do that. So in very simple terms, you might not be able to walk with your legs, but the fact that you don't have a wheelchair, the fact that there's no ramp makes it a disability. So I think very simply that because I will remove my spectacles and I can't see, that's my limitation of a body, which I'm not responsible for. but the state and me and the service is responsible for putting this spectacles on. So the inherent condition of your body and mind, when it interacts with the lack of services, that cause disability. I think years ago, the Delhi University had a form, वो male और female लिखते थे अपने forms में, of a third option they put at either as non-binary or trans, and then 74 applications came for that particular option. So the idea that you have service provisioning for people whom you till now felt that they should be excluded in itself is a way to reduce the effects of your impairment or disability. In terms of physical disabilities, so there's a condition called locomotor disability in the law. With locomotor disability, you also have young kids who are born with spina bifida, who are born with clubfoot. So clubfoot mein the legs are like this, and you have to do a lot of corrective surgeries to do that. So locomotor disability has many conditions in the law. But those are visible. They are people on wheelchairs. For people, when we generally say people on wheelchairs, they necessarily might not have a homogeneous term. सबको अलग-अलग चीजें हो सकती हैं. There are people who have complex conditions, but the fact that their movement is restricted in itself leads to disability. There are also visible conditions like blindness. Not blindness, but it's not a visible condition, but then a layman can figure out that someone is walking with a white cane or using an assistive tech. Yeah. Those are visible conditions. There's also a new condition which a lot of people don't know. So acid attack survivors also is in the law now. Yeah, which was not there earlier. In terms of invisible disabilities, a lot of conditions now. I mean, apart from things we know, so we know intellectual disability, we know autism, we know ADHD, we know learning disabilities by that movie Tare Zameen Par, dyslexia, and other learning disabilities. We also have a set of conditions which are now called blood disorders. Yeah, so there's hemophilia, there's sickle cell, there's thalassemia, there's sickle cell anemia. Those are not disabilities. There are certain neurological conditions which are, so one of them is Parkinson's disease. I've got into details of it, but I'm saying anything that's, the law doesn't necessarily differentiate between visible and non-visible disabilities. But for people who generally feel that there's locomotor disability, there's loss of vision, there's loss of hearing, there's blood disorders, there's acid attack survivors, there's intellectual disability, there's also mental illness, which has its own law, the Mental Health Care Act, but it's part of those 21 disabilities. And then there are multiple disabilities. The law also in the end says that any person who have had both the conditions would fall under the category of multiple disabilities. So, yeah.
I think you bring really important points, right? Like, first of all, there are so many terms, right? We talk CWSN, we say disability, we say Divyang, and internationally even more so, right? And then like you said, disability can always be on a spectrum. And then there's visible disability, invisible disability. And so from a policy point of view, or from a law point of view, when we are saying, right, like, this is, and we'll talk about reasonable accommodation in a little bit, or we talk about, support, or like what we should be doing. So for a policymaker or someone who's sitting at large, how do we say, this is what it is, this is what it is? And how do we look at that lens? Because language cuts both ways. It can also be a powerful medium. So then what are your thoughts on that?
See, I mean, we have a law which is law of this country. We have a Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, which was passed in 2016 and enshrines 21 disabilities. So I think in terms of policy frameworks and decision making and saying who's a disabled person and who's not, it's all in the law. That's not subjective, we can question it, we can advocate about it, but then the fact remains that there is a law. We have 21 disabilities, and that remains the fact. In terms of language, Nikunj, I mean, it has been ever since happening debate, So I think we are very clear that the movement, people with disabilities are very clear that it's either persons with disabilities, where you say it's a person first language. You refer to a person as a person first and then the disability later. However, there are disabled people whom saying it's also identity first. Disabled people is also not bad. Because it's not always the person first. The identity of the person is also very important.
Right.
So there are debates within the space in itself. Something which doesn't work is when you go extremely stigmatized and charity-driven language. So the red flag language where you say, "Acha, this person can't do all these things." I think that's something where we draw the line. Apart from that, so we are saying in terms of policy frameworks, we do have the list of 21 disabilities for people to work out their policies and data on. And then with the language, it's always better to have a person first language or identity first language. And depending on what you require, what I want for myself, what you want for yourself. I think that's very dependent on that person in itself.
Yeah. And I think you brought very subtly a very important point is that often who gets to define this, right? Is the persons with disabilities. Yes. They are the ones defining. They are the ones, saying this is the language we prefer, or this is what it is, versus like someone else. Or an able-bodied person, or someone with certain abilities. They are the ones defining it as well, I guess. Which is so crucial because it also talks about the power dynamics inherent with any ecosystem and system as well. I taught a classroom of 97 students in an all-girls government school here in Sangam Vihar in New Delhi for a couple of years. And of course, I absolutely love my students to death. Now, I taught them when they were in 7th and 8th grade. Now they're all growing up, doing their first jobs, or in colleges and things like that. Sometimes I feel like a father without, spending any money on their education or just like there. But I think they're brilliant folks, and it's so beautiful to see them evolved as, brilliant human beings. And I'll come to them being as girls also in a bit, because it's also about intersectionality. But something that was also there, that in my classroom, 97 students, there were students with visible disabilities who had struggles going around the schools because of different reasons. Similarly, there were students who had invisible disabilities as well, right? Now, I think with visible disabilities, someone not being able to climb stairs or like things like that, those kind of things are there. But with invisible disabilities, it can be like not being able to focus on something, like, different kind of cognitive disadvantages someone has, or there are other things that are going on, right? So how do you think in a classroom, different kind of visible and invisible disabilities manifest? Like, what have your experience or ASTHA's experience been?
See, I mean, of course, there's a difference, but I want to, sometimes we feel that the services and rights for people with visible disabilities are easy to get by. I think the ecosystem is in such a shape, Nikunj, that even ramps are difficult to get by. So when we think about accessibility, we just think about ramps and wheelchairs. The fact that we make this statement, that we know it's there, doesn't mean it's in a working condition. Doesn't mean it's working well, So across the system, across the ecosystem, across the space, we see that people are talking about ramps, people are talking about wheelchairs, but it's not perfect. Ramps are in a bad condition. The wheelchair, the railings are not always the optimal level. So I mean, just want to flag that. That even services for people with visible conditions are not not there yet.
And ramps may just be one aspect, like someone
it's just one
who can't see.
Something, this is the basic things are not there, across the space, and you see the infrastructure around you. The problem, I mean, the issue with people with invisible disabilities is that they invest a lot of time in just making people believe that there is a condition, So then the conversations don't fall upon the tools and services and the infrastructure accessibility, but the fact that one has to believe it. Forget about all the certifications in UDID and everything. How do you ensure that your teachers, your parents actually believe that you have autism or ADHD, whatever, even if we don't label it, then you need certain accommodation. So I think the greatest challenge with kids who have invisible conditions is that we just take a lot of time, Nikunj, in believing them. And I think that stigma also stays within the child, because when you are living with that condition and people are not believing you, it also stays within the child that probably something is wrong with me. So the manifestation is according to that as well. And I think that's the greatest of the difference. Apart from that, all services related to communication, technology, mobility, movement, learning, teaching, learning material are all barriers which are there for everyone. It's just we take a lot of time in believing that this child requires support, or is a child with disability as well. So I think that's the greatest of the difference.
We talked a lot about like environment in general, right? Like the role of parents, the role of teachers, everything. Like you're talking about sometimes things are left undiagnosed. I mean, there's of course like a money component to it as well. There's awareness component and a lot of other things. But it also, I think what you're talking about is having that mindset of not fixing the child, but fixing the system or fixing the environment around that, right? And that requires a huge mindset change systemically, right? Particularly by the immediate people who are interacting with that children the most. So how do we reach there?
So I mean, I have had children who probably are at risk. I don't know if risk is the right word, but who haven't been diagnosed disability as a formal process. And when I tell in my extended family that this kid probably needs some attention, the reaction that comes is not very positive. I always say this. I mean, we'll talk about ASTHA, but whenever we go to a community, Nikunj and my community worker goes to a family and say that this child has a disability, the mother immediately says, "Disabled hoga tera bacha." So the fact that how dare you, and it's across the class, So it's there in urban slums, it's there in my families, it's there with my friends, so it's there with my neighbors. So I know there are 2 young girls who have disabilities in my neighborhood, but how dare you question the child? So I think that's a reality of our society, that disability is something which has to be avoided at any cost, so we say it is the invincibility of the kids are invisible, no? So they should remain invisible. So even if the parent, and this sentence is not to blame parents, but I'm saying even if there's a child with disability at home, they should not emerge out from the home. They should remain invisible because there's so many things attached to it, and I don't think it's the fault of the parents. It's not the fault of the parents. So because they also have to face a lot of repercussions. With children, specifically Nikunj, with invisible disabilities, we see, because we are talking about how do we move from fixing the child to fixing the environment. We see 2-3 major things in the communities I have worked with, and people often say that the child will grow out of it. But grow out of what? The condition is there. It's not going to evict from the body and the mind. It's just going to be there. So we constantly feel the child will grow out of it. For 5-year-olds, we constantly feel कि अब बोलना चालू करेगा या अब चलना, and we wait. When we wait, we miss out on those crucial years. For children with invisible disabilities, we also say very interestingly. So let's say someone has a good speech, someone speaking just like you and I, someone's playing cricket but not able to study. So immediately the parents and teachers will say कि बात तो कर रहा है, खेल तो रहा है, पढ़ने में क्या परेशानी है? So it's just the nakhras of the child. So I'm saying, starting from we don't have to, and we have to ensure as a society that the disabled kids should be in their home. They should not be visible, So because if they are visible, things will emerge and people have to answer questions which are not very conducive. And also you constantly blame the child that, they're not trying enough. He's playing, he's drawing, and he's, have so much better communication, but why is he not studying? Or they'll grow out of it. I mean, we've seen that in gender identities as well, no? That we wait for them to grow out of it, but grow out of what? So I think those things have to tackle, no? And we have to believe what the child is experiencing, what the child is saying, what a young adult is saying, what a person is saying. And then we move towards fixing the environment. But the belief has to come.
Yeah. And I think I've just been thinking, right? When you're saying, right, it's about the environment, right? And like the whole system, not just parent, but the whole system having a society having a certain thought and idea, not each and every individual, but a larger mass. A lot of it also comes from popular media, right? Like we consume so much popular media, and like a lot of our thoughts get framed by that. Now, at Postcards, we also do movie meetups. So we did one on Sitare Zameen Par. We were watching movies like that, and so just to have a discussion, right? Even if a movie is not the best in a certain way. So but like there were movies like Tare Zameen Par, Sitare Zameen Par, at least in India. In foreign, there have been other movies as well, right? And so are there any like what do you think has the role the popular media has played, for example, in how students or just like folks with disabilities are being shown? And are there any movies or popular media which has like really pushed that narrative in some ways?
It's the print media as well, Nikunj. We still use the word wheelchair bound. So I think there are a lot of people within the disability ecosystem which are trying to do media sensitization, but we continue using words which were used like half a century ago. You open any mainstream news media, apart from few people who've actually worked with us and who've worked within the disability community, we continue using deaf and wheelchair bound. A wheelchair doesn't bound you, it frees you. So the print media also has limitations because we continue using words which the law doesn't want you to. So the law is very clear that you can't use those words. It harms the dignity of the person. With the other side of the media, Nikunj, I see it's, as a lot of people say, and the life of a person with disability is at two ends. Either it has to be completely romanticized. It's very inspirational. A person with disability beats all odds and secures and becomes IAS officer. Or it's completely charity driven. They can't do the Bechara syndrome of us. So I think the media is at two different tangents. Either this or that. But there are a lot of good shows. For me personally, the first movie, the Tare Zameen Par, was far better. Because this movie is just about him, about the coach as a protagonist. The protagonists are not disabled people. It's about he who cries and he who becomes he who realizes his own journey. When he cries, so the lives of disabled people should not be responsible for making able-bodied men feel that they've become. They've cried and they've walked back from the gate, and they are not responsible. The kids are not responsible for Amir Khan to feel. I'm sorry, but
you're not sorry. That was
make him a better person. So when both my partner and I, we were watching, and she's not a disability advocate, but she felt that earlier movie was far better. But still, it's in the right direction. It's in the right direction. And there are a lot of Netflix shows, but which are not Indian. There are a lot of movies which have now come, which put people with disabilities as something normal. I say, if you're saying normal, at least be normal. So we keep on saying that disabled log normal nahi hai, normal hai. I say, they are normal. At least have media representation, which is normal, so-called normal, and don't have romanticization of. It can't be inspiration porn and completely be charity. ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता ना. How can a community be just being divided into two parts? So I think just that, but I don't think we are moving backwards. I think the print media, the digital media is only moving forward. It will only improve in the next 10-15 years.
No, I think you're so right. And when we were discussing Sitare Zameen Par, like, of course, dubbed as a popular comedy or whatever that is, but I think sometimes the depiction of something can also be like, you're just trying to romanticize a particular struggle as well, versus just like the everyday rawness and grittiness. Not that you can't have a good moment.
Of course.
And I think at times, which is also not just unique to this, but like for many folks, I think it's someone who is in a position of power. They are the central protagonist for many like movies, versus whose story and life it is, which also talks about like, so from Amir Khan's lens, the movies being talked about versus the kids, right? And you can always debate about that. But it's
still better. I think it's still 2 steps ahead from what we are doing in other spaces. So in that sense, it's still a step ahead.
And which also makes me think, right? Like you're saying, in print media and all of that, we're talking about this stuff. But most of the times, does it border on tokenism? or is it really like a genuine desire? Like, I mean, one is, okay, there is a law, Supreme Court is saying something, and so there's like, tokenistically we are doing XYZ, but are we really committed to be like, we really want to make a change versus, keep on doing as is? Of course, like you said, like we take 2 steps forward, but is it 2 steps too little too late kind of a thing?
Probably, yeah. No, but I think the media will move forward, Nikunj. I think there's no second thoughts around it. There's a lot of work happening on media sensitization. Disability, there are a lot of organizations, big disability organizations, working on ensuring political rights for people with disabilities. So regardless of the situation we are in, I think we will move forward, and there's no second thoughts about it. I can have second thoughts on early intervention and inclusive education, but with media representation, I think things will only move forward. There's no looking back now.
That's very heartening to hear as well.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about rights and advocacy, right? And things like that. So in terms of the overall rights and advocacy, going to history a little bit, like even in India or even globally as well, have there been like particular movements which have like really brought the disability rights to the forefront? And it can be larger, but of course definitely more interested in for children with disabilities more so, either through legally or through policy changes as well.
See, I mean, we'll just talk about India, and I think for children with disabilities, it has been monumental. I mean, the last 2-3 decades. So you see, in post-independent India, Nikunj, we had the 1995 Act, which was the Persons with Disabilities Act, and then we had Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. Before that, we ratified the CRPD in 2008, if I'm not wrong. We were one of the first countries in this world to ratify the CRPD. One of the first countries, and there's still some countries doing that. The 2016 Act again is very, very progressive. So if we just talk about children with disabilities, so starting from the CRPD ratification to the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, and then having amendment in the Right to Education Act in 2012 or 13, I think, I think has worked, at least in the policy frameworks, has done a lot of good things for children with disabilities. And now the National Education Policy completely endorsing the RPWD Act and saying children with disabilities should become part of the mainstream. I think the enactment of the laws have moved in a good direction, Nikunj, regardless of how much we criticize, how much we critique. They have moved at a swift pace. What I see on ground, at least in conversations, and we'll also get to talk about what's happening on ground. There's no government official of Delhi government who says that the non-denial policy, should be there, because that children with disabilities should be denied. Everyone is speaking on the same page that every child with disability should be in schools. Every child with disability should be in Anganwadis, at least in schools, and no one can deny it. So I'm just saying the barriers and enablers are very different. What's happening on ground is very different. But at least in a space like Delhi where I work, you go from block, district level to state level to central level, everyone says ki can't deny admissions. So you feel good about it, that we'll also work out the barriers, but everyone's on the same page, at least in a space like this.
Right.
And it might not be true for other places, So I think we've tried to shift the needle, at least for children with disabilities in education, at least on paper, yet, and in education space. If you talk about other spaces, you talk about health, you talk about protection, there are different barriers. There's a lot of divergence within the protection laws and the disabilities laws. But at least on the convergence of disability and education, we have moved forward.
Okay. Yeah. And I think talking about laws per se, or or even some of the acts, I think there was this Supreme Court petition starting from Rajneesh Pandey versus Union of India, where the person actually went and started by talking about spatial educators. We say spatial educators should be there, and started by saying that the Supreme Court investigated on their own, and they realized, there's a lack of it. And then they started saying, where are these educators? What are the qualifications that they have, right? And so it became a whole thing in 2024. And so there was a lot of questioning that went on and on, and then it kind of, the Supreme Court said, and almost pointed out, this is something that needs to happen. Even there has to be RCI, like the educators have to be qualified and at a certain level, and all of those things are happening, right? And so we need to really think about all of that. And so moments like this also kind of help push forward the movement, which is a constant journey, I'm assuming anyway. But do you think, for example, this particular incident and similar incidents have been crucial?
See, I mean, of course, they are crucial. We had a similar judgment in Delhi years ago when I just joined ASTHA. I don't remember the exact year. I mean, these judgments are very important, and when it does come to Supreme Court, Supreme Court does have a tendency to take everything as a blanket, and I think it does move things forward. With the special educators, Nikunj, so you see in a typical classroom that there are children with different disabilities. There are kids who can't see, there are kids with cerebral palsy, there are kids with blindness. The special educators come and get trained in one disability. When the court judgment came for Delhi years ago, and there was a huge push saying that every school should have 2 special educators, we were actually thinking, has it been counterproductive in pushing this agenda that only special educators should be responsible for education of children with disabilities? It's huge. It's great. Things should move like this. But when we just, it's special. So the idea that children with disabilities will always require special education through the hands of special educators probably needs to be investigated a bit more and understood a bit more. But so I'm completely agreeing that whenever these judgments come, they only make the lives of children with disabilities better. There's no doubts about it. But who's responsible for delivering the education of children with disabilities? That should also be reflected and thought about, no?
Yeah. And I think which brings an important point, like in globally only, like all the teacher training programs that are being delivered and thought through as well, do they have a component about, how do you work, how do you support, how do you teach students with disabilities, and how do you think about that? So I don't know globally if someone has done a study like do teacher training programs have that component? At what level do you have it? What is the language do we use? How do you support it? How diagnosis and all of that as well.
We don't need to look too far. We have a lot of information and literature here, Nikunj, in this country on what works and what doesn't work. There's so many NGOs and civil society organizations doing amazing work. There's so many government schools, teachers, SMC members doing some good work. But I think before jumping onto the verticals of disability learning, we should also see that are we ready to adopt an approach where we believe fundamentally that children with disabilities can study? And if yes, can they study with all other kids? So I think that's the fundamental question we should ask ourselves, and not just the teachers. We all know how overburdened teachers, Anganwadi workers, ASHA workers are. Although I don't take that as an excuse to do injustice to disabled kids. So I think fundamentally, how do we look at education? How do we look at a class? You've taught 97 kids. I'm sure it would have been difficult for you, no? What would you have done if there was a child with blindness, there was a child with cerebral palsy, and there was a child with autism? You would have succumbed to pressure, How would you have managed? So it's both ways, no? And what does the system think of it? And we have many models now, Nikunj. We have resource centers in Delhi itself. We have 14 district resource centers for children with disabilities, and 14 more are announced. Delhi is not a huge state or a union territory, and it will soon have 28 resource centers. It will have Anganwadis co-located into school premises. It already has specific resource centers for children with disabilities. So whose responsibility is it? They're teachers, Nikunj. They're general teachers who have been trained in inclusive education. But the role of special educators need to be questioned, and the responsibility of it. Finally, the responsibility of teaching children with disabilities should fall on the mainstream general teachers, with special educators just there for support. It's the other way around right now. So there have been specific instances. So let's say in a school you have 15 children with disabilities. You pick 2 kids from this class, you pick 2 kids from this class, you pick 2 kids from this class, all children with disabilities, put them in a so-called center for so-called remedial classes, and then send them back to their regular classes. Now the question arises, for how long are they in regular classes and for how long are they together as a disabled unit? So, I mean, I think we have to just see that who teaches, how do they teach, and what is the role of special educators. Are we in a state in this country where we will be having special educators in all the schools?
Yep.
So we are talking about Delhi, but are we in a state where we'll have also in Uttarakhand and also Kerala, also in Assam? So hamari kitni capacity and how much can we deliver with this present model?
Yeah.
That also needs to be thought about.
And it's not one size fits all approach anywhere. Like you have to see what's working. And like you said, like, in my classroom, when I taught, there were students with different levels of not just visible but invisible disabilities as well. And sometimes I did feel helpless.
Of course.
For lack of a better word, like, okay, how do I do? What do I do? Of course, internet was one of the main sources, just reaching out to others.
Yes.
But at times, I was constantly questioning, am I truly doing justice?
And 97 kids.
Yeah.
97 now.
9. But I mean, think about a teacher, they're going to multiple classrooms every day. It's subject teaching, right? So, so like cumulatively, and then how do you remember? Like you said, teachers are already overburdened, and also
mind space.
Mind space. And how do you make things easier as well? So it's, I think, more like one size doesn't fit all approach. So do you do that? And a crucial thing, it is also the role of data in all of this, right? Sometimes we don't truly know, within a school or, or within a larger ecosystem or a community for that matter, do we really know in a community who are the different students that are there with different disability types? So like, I think disaggregated data, like with different disability types, again, if that's there, you can also kind of track, for example, out of school children. You can also track maybe students who are dropping out. Maybe you can also track other things. And at certain level, that data may exist. But and maybe in certain areas, in certain places it exists, in certain places doesn't exist. So I was just thinking about, what do you think is the importance of data in all of this? And data cuts both ways as well, especially if it's used as a weapon, or to scold or something like, oh, why is this not happening? Versus like, it being used to design something better, build something better, and things like that.
Data, I mean, so we've had the longest gap in the census, in this country after independence. So we don't know how many people with disabilities are there right now, Nikunj. The data we have is from 16 years ago, from 2011 census. So we don't have a correct estimation of the number of people with disabilities in this country at large. It's at 2.5% or whatever, but that's from 2011. When we talk about education, if you just move 3 years niche, so we also want to understand that how many there are. There are probably 14 lakhs Anganwadis, around 7 to 8 CR kids probably there. So we want to understand how many children with disabilities are in Anganwadis. We don't know. We have multiple reports. We have Enfono's report, and we have UNICEF, UNESCO, we have NSSO data. So I'm saying largely we are in a situation where now that we will have a census and we'll get more clarity. For education, Nikunj, for early education, we don't have data on the percentage of children with disabilities, 5-year-olds, accessing age-appropriate institutions. I think there was an NSSO data set which said around just 10% of all disabled population have in their entire lives attended preschool.
Okay.
There's also this data which shows that nearly, if you do a cross-sectional study of 5-year-olds, जो सारे 5 साल के बच्चे डिसेबल्ड हैं इस देश में, वो है कहाँ भी? 75% बच्चे घरों में हैं. So they're not there out, Lancet did a study. I'm just talking about early education. So Lancet did a study years ago which said, and सिर्फ 5 disability में उन्होंने रिसर्च किया और बोला कि इस देश में करीब 1 करोड़ बच्चे हैं who are at 4 to 5 years of age. So I'm saying if you decrease the age of disabled kids, we don't have data on how many kids are in preschools, how many children with disabilities have immunization, how many children with disabilities have malnourishment. So there's that. If you move 5 years ahead, if you see UDICE, then UDICE data has a lot of data sets, no? It shows you the number of kids in a school. It shows you the total population. By the way, even that jump from 2% to 60% is of 2011, based on the census. And now, Nikunj, if you see that, how many children with disabilities are in government schools? So, if you see data that out of 100 children, how many children with disabilities are in government schools, that's just around 1%. And it's constantly dropping. So why is it dropping? So at present, it's just 0.8%. The children with disabilities only comprises 0.8% of all kids in the education system. So I'm thinking data problem is there for everyone, but it's much more grave for very young kids. For a 3-year-old, for a 5-year-old, and that's where you need those data sets. Because health and disability also is intersectional. Malnourishment is also intersectional. Unless and until you know how many children with disabilities have malnourishment, how many malnourished kids have disability, and both act vice versa.
Yeah.
Things are better for school going. And I think the UDICE data also, Nikunj, now has data sets on specific disabilities. And it also shows that the newer disabilities as per the law, children with blood disorders, thalassemia, Parkinson's disease, sickle cell anemia are not going to schools. It's the ratio of the percentage is very, very low.
Yeah.
But yeah, according to me, and which I've also felt very personally, that how do we have data for early years? How do we have more accurate information on where are our kids who are less than 6 years of age? So that's something I think is very, very crucial.
And captured at an Anganwadi level for a government ecosystem or other preschool centers or whatever.
And FHS as well, the National Family Health Survey, they did record children with disabilities, and now, they had, the figures were not correct according to some of us. And the next natural step for them was to better the process, to have more questions of children with disabilities, but they completely removed the question saying we can't do this.
Oh.
Yeah, so the biggest survey for health of this country, the National Family Health Survey, now doesn't have questions on children with disabilities. And they say we can't do this.
Okay.
This is difficult for us.
So then to get data, do organization like not-for-profits then kind of, supplement that at times?
They do, but it's still to have policies and grants and research studies and really see what's happening on ground, you still need government data.
Of course.
No not-for-profit can have the scale which the government does.
Of course.
So I think it's just for the early years in health, which matter a lot, and we need data in that space. The education space is still moving forward, Nikunj.
Yeah.
We still have data and we can extrapolate a lot of information from that. But how do we define where is a 5-year-old child and what is his condition, what is their condition, and what are they doing, and what are their health status? We still are very confused in that.
And talking about data, and we were talking about like intersecting with health and other things and malnutrition and all. There are like 9.7 lakh boys to 7.1 lakh girls, like both like with disability. And so there's a clear gender gap that is there as well. And so like when I was talking about, like I taught in all girls school, like the girls face that double marginalization or barrier at times, especially if they were disability. What have you observed more so with, like, especially girl students with disabilities? Are there barriers that you have observed more? Of course, they're there. And how do you respond?
I think it's similar. It's similar to what happens with children and young adults without disabilities. See, one narrative which we constantly see, and I'm just speaking from my experience, which might not be true for everyone else. We also want children to earn gradually and become a source of income, for lack of a better word, for the families, no? For children with disabilities in general, that doesn't work out well for families. So for mothers who come to our meetings, the father is usually saying, why to waste your time and energy onto a child where you have 4 of them? Why do waste energies on this? Because the reaping benefits out of your efforts might not come through. I'm sorry, I'm putting it in a very crude way. So So it's usually the mother who's trying very hard. Yeah, she's coming from meeting. She's trying to understand the posture of the child, what should work for her, what she should feed her, how she should enable her learning, what are her seizure medications, and the other spouse is generally saying it's not probably worth it. And now if it's a girl with disability, then so I'm saying the vulnerability is such in certain families, Nikunj. There's so much poverty, there's very little information, and when you have just so much, I'm not saying it's right, but then the family is then thinking how to invest our time, how to invest our resources. The fact that they are working hard to send a child with disability using their own money for transportation and not really getting what they want is again very challenging for them. So they make up their mind, and it takes us years and years for them to convince. And when it's a girl with disability, it's again the entire journey again, So जितना समय हम एक परिवार को कन्विंस करने में लगाते हैं कि इस बच्चे का अधिकार है और वो स्कूल में जाए, उतना ही समय फिर हमें और लगाना पड़ता है कि अच्छा ये तो लड़की है और फिर डिसेबिलिटी और इसको शिक्षा का अधिकार है. So it's not a double whammy. I don't know how 10x 20x time when it needs. And for the families, they've justified, not for, the situation on ground is such that it's justified for them. They see it's difficult for us because they also don't find any support from anyone.
Yeah.
So they're constantly being challenged by the system to just do it all alone.
Yeah.
Eventually people do give up.
Yeah. And also I think a lot of ways it's also about role modeling at times. Right? Like if you see role models around you, I think that makes a world of difference as children.
Of course.
And also when you're talking about support, like the government has had this scheme under Subshiksha Abhiyan where they're giving 200 rupees per month for 10 months or thereabouts, especially to girl students with disabilities as well.
Yes.
So that's a push, small push. But I think structurally what more needs to be done.
Transportation has been one of the major factors for children dropping out of schools. When we see this in urban slums, they're very crammed lanes. The houses are very crammed in third, second floor. You don't have even space for staircase being at a particular gradient. So the stairs is just like this vertical, and the standard accessibility guidelines will fail miserably there because it won't work out. And we've seen from our experiences, from our studies, that transportation remains one of the biggest hurdle for children with disabilities, for them to get retained in the school. The money is crucial. Just as people question the idea of disability pensions, I think the transportation allowance is extremely crucial for the families. I don't know if the service in itself would have been a bit more helpful probably, because you give that allowances, the families are in such a dire condition, you don't know if the amount is going to be used for what.
Yeah.
They're often, with the families we work with, Nikunj, they're all families who have migrated from states and for a reason. And there are two paramount reasons. One is, of course, for weddings and marriages and partners. The other reason is they're looking for a cure for their child. So they are from neighboring states and the doctors tell them iska kuch nahi hoga. They come to Delhi and they're looking for a cure for their child, which is also leading to out-of-pocket expenses. So I'm saying transportation remains the biggest bottleneck in our experience for children with disabilities to go to schools. The response to that is a slight monetary expense, which gets absorbed to the extremely dire condition of the family, which has moved on from their village, from farming and to having extended family supports and better mental health and better air and good food, to a situation which is extremely brittle. Any shock will break the family down, So where does the money go? But there's no space to take a step back. So I think it has worked wonders in that sense. At least there's a provision. Because there's a provision, there's also realization that transportation is a huge barrier. Unless, why would have been there a transportation allowance? No. So we realize it's a barrier. The question is it the right way to deal with it? Because the situation is not good on ground. Families, especially after COVID, they've suffered a lot.
Yeah. So what's a better way to, in your opinion, to deal with it then?
We've tried certain things. I mean, I think one of course is the families. There's a lot of counseling and other things required. But probably would it work to have accessible transportation as a service in itself from the school in addition to the allowances? Would an increased allowance work for children with disabilities? But in our experience, Nikunj, it might not be successful everywhere. Just having accessible transportation for the child daily from their home to the school works wonders for the child. Also, I think leaving out, so if you see the entire ecosystem, in the disability ecosystem, you don't have with the health spaces, you have an ASHA worker. With the child rights, with the child education thing, you have an Anganwadi worker. In the disability ecosystem, it's just the mother. The mother of a child with disability is the response of the state cadre of community disability people. Yeah. So it's often the mother who's responsible for taking the child, and then the principals, the school administration is saying that you sit with the child. I mean, my parents never sat with me in the classroom, no. So we also have to have a resource in the community who is responsible for ensuring that kids do study. So probably the school management committee members can play a role, and that has also worked, Nikunj. So we've ensured that parents of children with disabilities get nominated as members in the school management committees.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they can also as a collective take responsibility. The other thing which has worked for us is that because we do a lot of work in communities, whose responsibility, it's not just the parent, it's not just the teacher, it's not just the system. So in places we work, Nikunj, so let's say in Sangam Vihar, I mean, because आपने यहाँ पढ़ाया है, a lot of water tankers.
Yeah.
पानी क्या बहुत समस्या है. Yeah. हम ओखला में देखते हैं पानी की बहुत परेशानियां हैं. So whenever it's the morning time and a child with wheelchair is coming, you have these big water tanks and there's just no space. So I'm saying with the money and transportation is a different thing, but also how do you make other people make space for children with disabilities? So you need a lot of information on communities. There's one more thing now, I'll stop after this, which has worked, is that peer support also works well. So we have had children with disabilities who have had 5 friends with them, and all of them would then take the wheelchair. Sometimes 1 kilometer is not too long if you have friends around it. So beyond the structural changes of money and transportation, there are a lot of things which works at community level. It has worked well for us. We've sent hundreds of children with disabilities to school. They have retained and been there in mainstream government education system.
Right. Yeah. And I think you were talking about, I think you said a lot of how you look at disability is also not about a particular thing, but it's also about the environment around you and is there sufficient accommodation for that? And the right for persons with disability act. It especially talks about this term reasonable accommodation, and making that happen. So what is reasonable accommodation, and how does that play out essentially?
The law also, I mean, I would want to mention that because we were talking about inclusive education, I mean, in post-independent India, this is the first time someone actually gave the definition of inclusive education. So you were in Sangam Vihar and you were teaching kids, and there were kids with disabilities, but you didn't know what is happening in a policy framework as well. So how does one define inclusive education? It was the first time that there were definitions, Nikunj. So who's a person with benchmark disability? What is a disability? What is reasonable accommodation? Reasonable accommodation, I mean, I was also thinking, and I was interacting with a sibling of a child with disability. He was trying to open the door. He was trying to open a latch. And then we were having conversations on disability. So the idea is very simple, that there should be, the infrastructure and services should be designed for everyone, not just for persons with disabilities, but for people with certain age, probably expecting mothers, people with mobility restrictions, people with chronic diseases, health conditions. Within that design principle, which works for everyone, the fact that I can lie down in your interview because I have chronic pain is a reasonable accommodation that you give this to me. Yeah, so we necessarily don't need to do an interview while just being here. I am allowed to lie down for 10 minutes.
Of course.
If I'm in a lot of pain, and if you allow that to me, you're giving me reasonable accommodation to take part in this space. It's very simple. Yeah. For children with disabilities who use pens, a lot of children don't have the hand grip as you and I. There's a difference in the hand grip. So we do a very simple thing. You've seen the bicycle handles, the black ones. We take them and wrap it around the pen with clay. So the hand grip becomes a bit better for that child. That is reasonable accommodation. So anything which enables their participation, just like you and I. So वही मैं उस बच्चे को कह रहा था कि he was opening a latch, but because there was a stool, there is a provision of stool which enables him to open and not become dependent on others. There's also this thing, no, that we expect children with disabilities to be constantly dependent on others. So to make them as independent as possible and work out, provide services either in communication or services that help them to be as independent as possible in their learning. That is very simple idea of reasonable accommodation.
No, of course. And I think from a state point of view, therefore, I think under the Samagr Shiksha Abhiyan, I think there's the budgetary allocation by your own research is roughly around 3,500 rupees per child, which include learning aids, other services that might, like, you know, then they need, and all of those things as well. Like you said, sometimes like there are so many out-of-pocket expenses. There are like so many things that are happening. And with respect to your like the disability you may have, it may also go up and down. Like we were talking about earlier about the, you know, blood related. And one of my students has that, and so they have to constantly go to hospitals, do transfusions, so transportation. Then, you know, of course, the cost for that and all of those things like that as well. So from a budgetary allocation point of view, I think essentially, do you have any thoughts on if government had more money, right? Like, you know, so where all can also be spent on?
So there's very interesting work that we are doing. So there's this home in Delhi called Asha Kiran. And it has been infamous for its treatment of disabled kids. They've been deaths across these many years. And there's a lot of work now happening on de-institutionalization of these homes. I mean, for me, Nikunj, I think it's, so we've, you know, and there are two narratives about it. Either you think very radically that all homes, all children with disabilities have the right to live in the community, which the law says. For that, you have to end the existence of those homes at a given point of time gradually. Or you think that you can only improve the condition of those homes. So I think the budgetary allocations have to be towards radical things now, because things are not going to move forward with the gradual approach, at least for some components. So this is just an example. At least for institutional care for children with disabilities, the provisions have to be in such will ensure that a child with disability has the rights and services to stay in a community and not work, you know, in a way to make more homes. So I think even with inclusive education and early intervention, with ECCD, we've seen, Nikunj, that disability is the only sector probably which doesn't have that key worker. So you have an ASHA worker in the health space. In early childhood space, you have that Anganwadi worker. You have in disaster response, you have the DDMA teams and the Apada Mitras. But this is just the disability space, Nikunj, where we don't have them. And we have a response. We are saying that mothers of parents or parents of children with disabilities can be those people, you know. So would it be worthwhile to create and explore at least the idea of having trained mothers of children with disabilities being resource persons in the communities they work with?
Right.
And what would it lead to? The Anganwadi worker is, according to government's own research, gives what 12% of time in just teaching. No, so what happens if she has a resource, at least someone to link her up with? I mean, probably these couple of things, at least with the early childhood care space, which is very close to me, and I think there's a lot of investment needed there.
And if you want to talk about it, like you were just talking about, like these radical approaches between, like, you know, like, oh, should it be community based as well? From a similar lens, I think this is one of the audience questions that came, was around about schools, right? Like, should students with disability be part of, you know, schools? And, you know, everyone is studying in same schools, or they are in special schools, right? And that's more like a radical shift, like almost like imagine like a 1 year shift or a 1 term shift.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I mean, maybe not tomorrow, but even if it's like even a 1 year is a short time for such a huge shift, everything. And of course, there's not always a straightforward and easy response to this, right? Like, but where do you stand on it? What do you think about that?
So, see, the law has 3 sides of education for children with disabilities, and parents have a choice. Now, the choice itself is subjective, but I'm saying parents do have a choice in choosing that if the child should be in a mainstream government school, should they be in a special school, or should they be in something called home-based education. Yeah. We as an organization ran a special school, Nikunj, for good 17 years. It's been a special journey in that sense because we've done the journey of being from a special school to being a caring organization to being a community-based and rights-based organization across last 3 decades. The choice again is on parents, but we have to see the benefits of what happens. A lot of people do say that because the school education system is replete with so many barriers, are we wasting time for a child with disability? So what happens when an 8-year-old, 10-year-old child goes to a school and they have already, kept out of the first 5 years, so learning kaise ho rahi hai? Now, are we pushing too much? Will the system break? And then there are those special schools, but within those special schools, Nikunj, so do we have special schools for all disabilities? Are all special schools recognized? Is there a transition from one side of education to another? So what happens if a child with disability chooses to stay in a special school? Are there any existing frameworks which enables a parent to choose from one to another? What happens in a home-based education? So if we see the civil society reports, out of all the kids who are into home-based education, how many kids have so-called profound and severe disabilities? And can they come out of home-based education? But is there an exit point to something? So I can have a view. I fundamentally believe that all children with disabilities should be in mainstream government education systems, and we should push for it. But that push also comes at a cost of overburdening the existing system. But is there also a link between the existing 3 sides? In our experience, Nikunj, just to end, we've seen that children who are at the behest of home-based education are the children who need the most support from us. So children who have so-called severe disabilities, multiple disabilities, we've had kids who've been just lying down in their homes and just staring at the ceiling for good 5-6 years of their life. So what does home-based education does for them? And can they ever have an exit point from home-based education to regular schools, at least for some time? For a lot of these kids, education does a lot of other things than education as well. Finally, they have to be in the society. We'll all have to be partners in jobs and entertainment. So how do we do that? It's a difficult question, but my personal stand, I've told you, and we also need to establish linkages between those 3 sides of education. The law permits them. It's a parent's choice. We've also had parents who say that, no, we just want to send our child with disability into private school. Because every time you have a quota and they say, we just want to have private schools, and we respect that. Then it's for them to decide. But at least the information should go to them.
The information is the key thing.
It has to be an informed decision for them, no?
And I think because you said like this journey of ASTHA is also interesting, starting from special school focused to now community-based. And I think community-based rehabilitation models around the world are, and even in India, like, there are so many green shoots, like, good bright spots. And even if you look beyond India, there have been like Colombia's Escuela Nuevo, which focuses on, universal design for learning, or, Malawi focusing on that, South Africa teaching for all as well. And I think I was talking to a friend recently how, even from a larger ecosystem, how do you have a universal design for learning, which kind of works for, so you're not like spatially just focusing on, like retrofitting solutions at the end. But like when you're designing something, it includes and thinks about what would folks with different kind of disabilities would face, and then it has reasonable accommodations around that built in kind of in a way as well.
And also, how do parents have because in the in this approach, Nikunj, which is community-based rehab, we've seen that the life of a child with disability is not in isolation.
Yeah.
So how do you design programs addressing that there is existing caregiver burden? Regardless of you work with any child, regardless of their disability, be it invisible or invisible, I think we should have the comprehension that the burden of the responsibility will fall on the mother. She will give those extra hours, and how do you design your programs in such a way? So there are a lot of times where we make those 3-month IEPs. You would know about how do we make education plans for kids. You've taught kids. There are sometimes in a space of 3 months where we just focus on the mother, because finding the mother who needs a lot of support. So CBR work has also taught us that it's also issues what brings up into the community. So we've been in the communities working for CBR where 10 mothers have said that we're not getting rations correctly and there is corruption happening with those ration shops. So as an organization, you have to take up issues which are also aligning with the families, because the life is not in isolation and the family needs to be taken along, and that has been a great learning for us. There have also been learnings where we've learned from families on what to do with a child with disability and what should be our priorities. We've found children with disabilities who've been 5 years of age, who can't see, but they're not able to stand as well because no one has ever told them to. So extremely weak, have malnourishment, severely acutely malnourishment, can listen sounds because from outside, but have never experienced standing for 5 to 6 years. So how do you design programs for the mother as well? Because it's finally she who needs support as well. So I think working on wisdom of parents and mothers have been a great learning for us as an organization when we design IEPs and programs, because nothing moves beyond them. You can't exclude them.
And I think and I think in a way we end up focusing on mothers because, like you were earlier saying, mothers are the ones between the two heteronormative marriage, like they're the ones who end up attending more or like more concerned more. And I think talking about community, there are a lot of different actors at play within a community as well. I think someone was mentioning about superstitious actors who kind of like peddle all sort of things and suddenly which is not rooted in any forget about science, but anything whatsoever. And they may be doing their own business and all, and doing more harm than good at times.
Harm monetarily as well to families who are extremely compromised anyways. So we follow two-way approach, Nikunj. Whenever we do community sensitization, so we also recognize them as people who have influence in the communities they are in. Just like the disabilities, special schools and regular schools, you can't change a narrative in one day. It's not possible for us to go into a community and say, don't believe in them. So they have to be a part of the conversation. Whenever we do community discourse meetings or community sensitization, they were on the key stakeholders for us as an organization, for them to get sensitized. But wherever there's injustice happening, where we've seen that there's harm to the child, they've taken money from the mother. So we've had situations where they've taken 5,000 rupees just to tell that they'll cure the disability of the child. Then we've acted legally as well. We've used mechanisms which we should have used. Otherwise, everyone who belongs in the community, regardless of caste, class, creed, or their occupation, becomes part of the stakeholders who should know about disability. But then whenever there's harm, so of course there should be no harm to the child in the mother's autonomy. Whenever that is, we do follow legal procedures and bring it up. It exists. Medical, what do we say, medical pluralism, I don't know, but it exists rampantly in the communities. In our own research, Nikunj, we've seen that families who come to Delhi go to at least 7 hospitals in the city to look for a cure for the child. The same research was done in late 1990s. The same research was done in early 2010s. The same data is there. That at least 5 to 7 hospitals a parent is going to look for a cure for their child. And everywhere they're saying, kuch nahi ho sakta. But then there's a Baba who's saying, I'll do it for half of your monthly salary.
And you cling to some kind of hope or whatever, right? Especially like when you don't have all that.
Yes.
I think like as we come towards the close of our conversations as well, I think one of the things I'm curious to learn about is just, I mean, like we live in an AI world now.
Yeah.
You can't deny that.
Yeah.
There is like so much concern about AI will take away jobs, AI will do that, etc.
Yeah.
And all of those things. And like so many things about AI, right? And so from a tech and AI point of view, it can, for students with disability, it can act as a bridge.
Of course.
But it can also, widen that gap as well, right? In terms of access, in terms of, a lot of other things.
Yeah.
How do you see tech and AI, the role it is already playing and the role it can potentially play in the future?
Yeah. I came to ASTHA as someone who studied mathematics for 3 semesters, right? I thought I'll work out excellent data systems in this organization and what are they doing, and I knew quantitative aptitude, I know maths, I'm good at the technical data sets of things. But as reality, you see in the community and you see the huge diversity of kids which is there, Nikunj. So, I mean, in my 8 years of experience, I've constantly tried to have a learning outcome tool for children with disabilities which can be put on a screen and which can be simplified in numbers, but have failed because it's a cross-disability community space. And we also need to have spaces to measure the caregiver burden of the mother as well. Yeah. I think it's just that. I mean, my apprehensions and experiences have constantly seen that whatever the big institutions of this country make is not able to trickle down to the community level. No, you would have seen in your experience that we have these huge announcements of tech innovations in good institutions of this country, but we never see them coming on ground as a mass product to be used. Because there's some alienation which is happening from the needs of people who are in the community, who have very different context to people who are actually working out their policies. A lot of my community workers now use AI. They've done beautifully well. So they make their presentations, they send me emails in those fancy words with hyphens, and so it's there. It's not going to be, it's going to become a reality of what we're doing. But I'm saying with terms of data and tech, the reality is very, very different on ground. It will take our kids forward, but how do we also make it safe for them is a question which I still don't know. Even before the advent of the AI, Nikunj, even the tech platform, even the tech options for children with disabilities are not always customized to the community level and the context they live in. So I'm not sure as of yet. I know a lot of people who have access to resources can actually also understand the nuances behind AI. But for people who are at certain stage and certain context, I don't have good answers to,
of course,
say.
No, of course. And I think something that is always questioned about AI is the data set which is trained on, right? And there was a huge early conversation around what data set is being trained on. It's a particular data set from Western spaces and all. And gradually it's building more and more. I would question like how much of that data set is based on the lived experiences or, generally the realities of folks with disabilities. And does it automatically think about it, accommodating that and all of that? And of course, it's a constant journey, but in that way, it may be magnifying some of those biases. It may be magnifying those, those realities of the society in many ways, and also, widening that gap. And I think we are trying to reimagine all these spaces for a future world. We're trying to,
of course,
prepare all children, and so in this context, to be prepared for the future. So then students with disabilities also be prepared for the future world as well. So planning for that today in terms of tech and AI is.
And just like a lot of kids now, with the community of children who have blindness, we've gradually moved to tech support a lot. No, there are a lot of kids now who use their smartphones, who use their talkback softwares, who use audiobooks. It has worked wonderfully well for them. And then there's this debate of braille or tech or both. But amidst that debate, children have moved on. A lot of our kids, Nikunj, who have grown in that space for the last 4 years, have now just imbibed the technology. So it has worked wonders for some of them. and I'm probably AI is onto that as well.
Yeah, and that's the hope. And I think, how do we actively involve then folks with lived experiences with different disabilities in that design
and different context as well.
In context is so important, so that that is getting worked out. I was just wondering, like, let's assume you were elected as a member of parliament in the elections that happened. Whichever party, or were you an independent candidate, whatever that was, but let's suppose you were elected as a member of parliament, right? You're sitting in Lok Sabha right now. What is that one like bill or act like you would like to introduce? Whatever comes to your mind.
I mean, I see, because we were talking about education, something which is very close to me is how the early years are shaped out for children with disabilities. I still feel there's a lot of space, lot of things we could do, at least with inclusive education. Nikunj, now we are questioning that how many children with disabilities are there, how many will get retained. For early years, I just personally think we're just doing too much injustice to them. I want to see all children with disabilities into Anganwadi systems and preschools. So something on those lines, should be not a blanket policy that you have to do it in next 3 months. But how do we ensure 5-year-olds in their neighborhood Anganwadi centers learning with their peers is something I would want to see. So something on those lines probably.
Yeah. And inclusion is not a charity or something like it's a foreign concept. It's a right, it's a duty. And from a duty point of view as well of every citizen, like ranging from parents to, children to like adults to like, different members of the society. So essentially, what can each and every citizen of the country can do towards making, like, you have some simple thoughts or ideas.
There's one thing I feel which we all should do, at least for our, forget about the communities and the context and the realities. I know a lot of us are separated from the lived experiences of this country, our idea of country is very skewed because we only see metropolitan cities around us. I think even in a place like Delhi, Nikunj, a lot of us would not believe when we at least go to those geographical areas that those places exist in this country. But at least for all of us people, I think at least our social media content should be accessible. We should start doing image descriptions and alt text for our social media posts. That's all I want as of now. If I tell one thing to do to my engineering friends who I studied with, I'll just say use image descriptions in your social media posts on Instagram, nothing else. We'll figure out everything else, because that gradual response will come. It's not easy for someone who has a very different life to know the realities of this country and context. But at least जो चीज़ें बहुत अच्छे से करते हैं, I know people are very, they are very good on social media. At least make that content accessible. Have image descriptions and content warnings and other things in place. That's just one simple bit which I believe we could do.
Thank you, Pratik, for sharing your incredible insights and work.
Thanks.
And of course, like, we'll link ASTHA's work in the description as well, so that people can follow and know more about the work as well, and also like larger things that are going on, including our research. Before we kind of like close our conversation, I'm curious for our listeners, and we ask this to every basically guest, if you have to suggest, how do I say it, 3 things to read, 2 things to watch or listen, and 1 person to follow.
So that's me.
So people should follow.
No, so 2 things to watch.
So just to repeat, so 3 things to read, 2 things to watch, and 1 person to follow.
So that 1 person is me. Just follow me and I'll get you all the information. No, I think so. On a serious note, I think 2 things to watch is I've watched a lot of Javed Abidi videos. He came on Satyam Jayate. Javed Abidi, for people who don't know, has been a disability rights veteran, and everything we have, he has been monumental in shaping the disability discourse. Very fierce activist of this country, because we continue to look at role models, and we also continue to explore what role models exist in this country. Nikunj, it is in my first few years of ASTHA. Javed Abidisa passed away, and I could probably meet him once, just see him once. Whenever I go for trainings, I play his 6 minutes video where he talks to Amir Khan on Satyam Vijayate. I think it works wonders for me because there's so many things which I talk in a very complex way, and he just, pulls it out, simplifies. I think that's one. There's a beautiful long video someone shared with me on how does early learning matter for deaf kids. I'll share that with you.
Yes.
So I think there are many more videos, but at least these two.
Yep.
I think. Amongst things to read, one of the very stereotypical, my life-changing book was Harsh Mardar's Looking Away during my engineering. That was the first book I picked, and then I've read a lot of books, but that one book I think changed how I perceive society. There are a lot of Indian parents who are writing amazing books on their experiences of living with a child with disability. I don't have names on top of my head, but there are those books. We continue to look for narratives outside India, but अब बहुत लोग हैं, बहुत पेरेंट्स ने बुक्स लिखी हैं जिन बच्चों को ऑटिज्म है, अपने बच्चों के बारे में. I think we should, and it's a good read. It's not a hard, difficult, jargonish read. It's a good read which will tell us what are the experiences of disability in this country. I'll again send them and we can put them. Yeah. So yeah.
And is your
I was serious about that.
Yeah. No. The follow-up question was...
I was serious about that.
I know.
Yeah.
Everyone should follow you 100%.
Yeah.
If you had to, as a follow-up to that, if you have to recommend one guest that we invite, and they're kind enough to come as well, but that we should invite on our podcast, is there any name that comes to your mind? I think even, so I'll just to be very humble, I'll change my answer as well. It's a very, I have a lot of names, Nikunj, but मैं अपने personal experiences से बोलूँगा. So, आस्था के जो founder हैं राधिका काजी, I think मेरी whatever journey I have had and my learnings across in this space, and as a leader who knows how to let it be, the leaders who just cling on and who are still trying to understand what does it mean to let go in leadership. My personal professional journey in the space of leadership, disability rights has just been from her. So I think there are many names, but I can't. For me, she is the one who has been a stalwart of the disability rights in this country, and also someone who's framed many young people on leadership rights and others. So, for me, it's just Radhika Kazi. So it's coming from my personal experiences, but also her contribution in the disability ecosystem. I would not have been, I would not have been here as a identity itself, because sometimes the sectors are very closed. As a young person, if you walk into a health sector or a disability sector, you might not get that exposure in your 8 years, what I've got, and that is only when a leader decides to let it go. And she's been instrumental in that journey of me. Perfect. Yeah. We hope to get her on the podcast one day. But finally, you wrote a postcard to your future self. Yes. Do you mind sharing it with our listeners? I do, but I can share as well. So, I think so. This while I was writing it, I was thinking what to write. It just stems from my journey to being someone who studied engineering for 4 years, was horribly bad, failed in a lot of subjects, decided to do something which I liked, and the last 8 years have been one of the most satisfying of my life. I keep on making this dialogue, which I will also make it here. It's every Sunday evening because I feel I have to go to work. So मुझे ऐसे Friday blues नहीं होता. And that's what I think wrote. That's what I wrote here. So I said the journey has been, to my future self, I wrote the journey has been worthwhile. And there's a hope that young people, often at the crossroads of choosing quote-unquote careers, can find their calling
gradually, but also with a lot of courage and self-doubt. Courage and self-doubt are diametrically opposite, but has worked in coexisting kind of a way for me. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for an incredible conversation, and it was so lovely to have you.
Thanks, Nikunj. Thanks for doing this. Thank you.
I want to end this episode by quoting few lines from this beautiful poem by Puneet Singhal. If everyone was a little disabled, the world would look a little different, a little softer, a little slower, a little kinder. Ramps would blend into sidewalks, and doors would open without a struggle. Braille would be as common as print, and sign language would flow like poetry, in conversations, in classrooms, on screens. If everyone was a little disabled, compassion wouldn't be a policy, it'd be the pulse of every heartbeat. And I wouldn't need to explain why I deserve a space in this world. The world would simply be made for me. Before I end the episode, I want to give a huge shout out to the team which has tirelessly worked behind the scenes to make this episode possible. First of all, to our incredible research team led by Natasha, who has worked on this episode along with Kavish. I also want to give a huge shout out to our content and media team led by Naisha and supported by Diksha, who have made a lot of this video possible which you're seeing or watching. And finally, a huge shout out to our community team of Kritika and Anukriti, who have been building a beautiful Postcards community. And there is a link in the description and the comment section. So please do check out and join our communities as well. We have a lot of public policy communities on all sorts of topics. So you're welcome to join. And finally, to our incredible mentors, Shaiz and Shafali, who have been a true backbone for all our content and media work. Thank you for tuning in. It has been so wonderful sharing this beautiful episode with you. We have more wonderful episodes coming in, ranging from climate at the intersection of youth, activism, to topics like tech and health and AI and a lot more. So stay tuned in. We would love your feedback and comments. So do share it with us either on DMs or in the comment section. And don't be a stranger. Bye.